What happens when fame turns into infamy? When a man once worshipped on stage becomes one of the most hated figures in music history. This week, the name Lostprophets is trending again after shocking reports confirmed the death of their former frontman, Ian Watkins, inside a UK prison. For many, this feels like the final chapter of a dark story that began over a decade ago, a story of fame, betrayal, and the irreversible collapse of a once beloved band. To understand the impact of this news, we have to go back to where it all began. In the early 2000s, Lostprophets were unstoppable. The Welsh rock band rose from local gigs to international fame with their mix of alternative rock, metal, and emo-inspired anthems. Songs like Last Train Home, Rooftops, and Shinobi vs. Dragon Ninja defined a generation. They weren't just making music. They were shaping a culture. Ian Watkins, the band's charismatic frontman, stood at the center of it all. Stylish, confident, and seemingly untouchable, he became a rock icon for millions of fans around the world. But behind the stage lights and fame, there was a darker truth waiting to be uncovered. In 2012, the shocking reality came out. Watkins was arrested and charged with a series of horrifying crimes involving children. Crimes so disturbing that police officers described the evidence as some of the worst they had ever seen. By 2013, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 29 years in prison, with an additional 6 years on license. The world was stunned. Fans were heartbroken, and the band instantly ceased to exist. For the other members, everything they had built collapsed overnight. Lee Gaze, Mike Lewis, Jamie Oliver, and Stuart Richardson were completely blindsided. They had no involvement in Watkins' crimes, yet they paid a heavy price for being part of the same band. Their songs were pulled off the air. Record labels dropped them. The name Lostprophets became radioactive. It wasn't just the end of the band. It was the death of a dream. Inside prison, Watkins quickly became one of the most hated inmates in the UK. He faced constant threats, isolation, and violence from fellow prisoners. In 2023, reports emerged that he had been attacked and held hostage for several hours. He survived that incident, but it showed just how despised he had become. And now, in October 2025, the story has come to its grim conclusion. News broke that Ian Watkins had been found dead inside Wakefield Prison, often referred to as one of the toughest prisons in Britain. Investigations are ongoing, but early reports confirm that he was killed by other inmates. The moment the news went public, the internet exploded. Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, all flooded with reactions, disbelief, and divided emotions. For some, it felt like justice had finally been served. For others, it reopened old wounds, forcing them to relive one of the most disturbing chapters in modern music history. After the band's collapse, the remaining members refused to disappear quietly. In 2014, they formed a new band called No Devotion with Jeff Rickley, the frontman of the American band Thursday. They didn't chase fame this time. They just wanted to reclaim their lives and make music again. Their first album, Permanence, released in 2015, was full of pain and reflection. It was a message that they were still here, still human and trying to heal. But the shadow of Lostprophets never went away. Every interview, every performance, someone always brought up Ian Watkins. Even fans who supported them admitted it was hard to separate the new music from the old memories. And for those who couldn't, Lostprophets songs became impossible to listen to without feeling guilt or disgust. Still, No Devotion pressed on. In 2022, they released another album called No Oblivion, a fitting title for a band that refused to vanish. But in interviews, they were honest. They admitted that the pain never truly faded, and that they would carry the weight of Lostprophets past forever. When news of Watkins' death broke, reactions were fierce and emotional. Some called it karma, saying he finally got what he deserved. Others reminded the world that celebrating a person's death, no matter who they are, doesn't erase the pain they caused. One viral post on X, formerly known as Twitter, said, "Justice isn't about revenge. Death doesn't heal trauma. It just ends a story." Old fans began sharing clips of the band's concerts from the early 2000s. Some reminisce about the good times, the soundtracks of their youth, before everything changed. Others said they deleted every Lostprophets song years ago and never looked back. The conversation reignited the same haunting question that's followed this story for years. Can you ever separate the art from the artist? Meanwhile, victim support groups and child protection charities use the trending moment to remind the public that real justice isn't about what happens to the offender. It's about the lives that were damaged and the people still healing. For them, Watkins' death doesn't close the book. It just stops one voice from ever speaking again. The Lost Prophet story is now taught and discussed as one of the darkest cautionary tales in modern music. Documentaries, crime podcasts, and music historians all cite it as an example of how fame and power can hide evil in plain sight. It forced the industry to look at how much blind trust is given to stars, and how little protection existed for those they could hurt. Before this scandal, the band was often compared to Linkin Park, even sharing stages and festival slots with some of rock's biggest names. After it, no one even dared mention their name. And now, with the news of Ian Watkins' death, the world is being reminded once again of how quickly a legacy can turn to dust. For fans who grew up on their music, it's a conflicting moment. They remember the excitement, the lyrics that once spoke to them, the songs that played at parties and graduations, yet all of it now carries a shadow that can't be erased. It's not just the loss of a band, it's the loss of trust between artists and audiences. The remaining members of Lostprophets didn't commit any crime, but they became symbols of how one man's actions can destroy the work of many. They tried to rebuild, and in some ways they succeeded. But they'll forever carry the label of being the guys from Lostprophets, whether they like it or not. The death of Ian Watkins closes one of the darkest chapters in music history, but it doesn't erase what happened. It forces us to confront a difficult truth about celebrity culture, that fame can sometimes protect people who don't deserve it, and blind us to what's really happening behind closed doors. It also leaves a heavy question for all of us. What do we do with the art that's been tainted by the artist? Do we erase it completely? Or do we keep it as a warning, a reminder how easily the world can be deceived by fame? The truth is, there's no easy answer. For some, justice has finally been served. For others, it's a hollow ending to a nightmare that never should have happened in the first place. The story of Lostprophets will always be remembered, not for their success, but for how it all came crashing down. And now, with Ian Watkins gone, it feels like the final period in a story the world wishes had never been written. It's a grim reminder that talent does not equal integrity, and that charisma can sometimes hide the darkest secrets. In the end, the Lostprophets' legacy stands as both a warning and a tragedy, a story of how fame, unchecked, can destroy everything in its path. So maybe the real question isn't about Ian Watkins anymore. Maybe it's about us, the fans, the media, the culture that lifts people up without truly knowing who they are. Because as history keeps proving, it only takes one person to ruin what so many others work to build. And that, perhaps, is the real aftermath of Lostprophets. Thanks for watching the untold aftermath of Lostprophets, the fall of a rock star. If you found this story thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories like this one. And in the comments, tell us what you think. Did this story finally find closure, or are there still questions left unanswered?